We are very honored, as you said, Monica, to have with us here tonight Florida State Representative Anna Eskamani and also Kofi Hunt, who is with the National Fast Food Workers Union in the Fight for 15 in Florida. Anna, Kofi, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
No, I think that's 100% true. And you know, I'll just ask you this as the first question here, Anna, and Kofi is going to join us hopefully in a little bit. You know, looking at what happened in Florida, I think many people were somewhat amazed that this took place, but that's because they don't live in Florida. I was hoping just to give us some context here about the type of coalition that was built to make this happen, because I think people are looking saying, well, you know, Ron DeSantis, the governor, Trump won the state. How does something like this happen?
Yeah, that is such a great question. So we have been building coalitions at a grassroots level in Florida around increasing the minimum wage for years. I was a college student advocating alongside the picket line with our fast food workers at McDonald's, all the way to our assisted living facilities with our CNAs, all fighting for the same thing, an increase in minimum wage, 5 for 15, to secure an increase through the legislative process, but then eventually it became pretty clear that a ballot amendment would be the only way to do it. And this coalition also intersected with folks who have a lot of means. I mean, John Morgan, who is a wealthy political donor, he's a trial attorney in Florida. He was a major funder behind this issue. For him, it was about dignity and paying people what they're worth. So there was solidarity found among compassionate donor class folks alongside, you know, everyday hardworking Floridians. And it was really centering on the needs of everyday people and how a $15 minimum wage transcends party lines. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat when it comes to an eviction notice, when it comes to the broken unemployment system, when it comes to putting food on your table. And so we saw overwhelmingly, as you said, Floridians support the $15 minimum wage amendment, even though the state of Florida went to President Trump. And for me, it's a good example of how we need more Democrats to push back on corporate influence, to support the issues that really matter to everyday working people.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's incredibly important work that you've laid out here, and I have so much respect really for pushing that forward, because we saw this Amendment 2 pass with 60% of the vote, and that was more votes than either candidates, either Biden or Trump, won in Florida. And at the same time, we're really, I think, revealing a lot of contradictions. Florida lost 5 seats in the House, or Florida Democrats, you know, lost 5 seats in the House, and of course, overall went to Trump by a slim margin. Now, what do you think this says about the strategy that's necessary for the movement for workers' rights in Florida?
Well, we got to center the policy decisions on working people. You know, we cannot make assumptions about what working people need to survive. And I say that as a daughter of working class immigrants. You know, my family came to this country at 2 different points. My parents met in Orlando, coming from Iran, made this community their home, and they worked minimum wage jobs to make ends meet. And so the only fights that happened in my family were about money. So we know that economic security is so important to the health and well-being of every Floridian. And so I think it's really important that workers lead the way, and that we also let go, as I mentioned earlier, of the influence of corporate donors. You know, some of our top Democrats were weak on this issue, and it's grounded in where they get their money from. And I'm proud to be an elected Democrat here in the state of Florida that doesn't take money from fossil fuel companies, big sugar, minimum wage employers, private prisons, banks. Like, I'm very intentional in where our money comes from. I've turned away money and have mailed back checks when they're against our values. And so, unfortunately, that's not the norm. And that corporate influence holds back Democrats, not just from this issue, but also from closing corporate tax loopholes, from setting ambitious renewable energy goals, by challenging the impact of agriculture and polluting our waterways. You name it, there's a corporate tie to it. And I think it's a reminder that we need to focus on everyday people and their interests, and not the interests of corporate donors.
For sure, for sure. Now, of course, these everyday people include those who voted for Trump. Do you think that the win for Fight for 15 in Florida signals that Trump supporters can be won over to a more progressive agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, another good example is in our district. So I represent a swing district. We flipped this seat in 2018 and we kept it this November by an even larger margin than we won in 2018. And out of the 4 precincts we flipped this cycle, 2 actually voted for President Trump. So these 2 precincts, 55% of the community voted for Trump, and we won 54%. And so that tells me that when you run on ethical, authentic issues that impact everyday people, that you can gain, you can earn the support. You can earn the support of those that might typically be politically opposite of you, but because you find commonality on issues that impact a person's wallet and a person's health and well-being, and that you build upon a collective power and a notion that everyone should experience joy and everyone should experience safety, that you can gain that support.
Extraordinarily well taken point. And you know, there's so much to be said here. I just want to note here, we are now joined by Kofi Hunt, political director with SEIU, National Fast Food Workers Union in Florida, and the Fight for 15 in Florida. Kofi, thank you so much for joining us here. And you know, I really just want to jump right in. You know, one of the things I'm very curious about is what has the impact of this win on this $15 an hour minimum wage been for the workers who organized on this? I mean, I know so much has gone into this, and this has been one of the toughest fights in the labor movement around $15 an hour. So I'm wondering, in the aftermath, how has this affected the organizers?
It's affected them immensely. In terms of the organizers, we know that our work means something, that we've accomplished something incredible, historic. In terms of the workers, it's actually really interesting. A lot of workers have actually said they didn't realize how low the minimum wage was in Florida. So we've educated them, we've educated their families. And in terms of, I say, the progressive movement, I think in Florida, with Biden losing Florida, a lot of what Rep. Eskamani is saying is giving people hope that there is like a future for Florida in terms of politics that can be centered around everyday people, around workers.
You know, I think that's an extraordinarily important point. I mean, I think it's an important point for the whole rest of the country. And I'll just ask you this as a follow-up as well, Kofi. I mean, what is your message to people in the rest of the country who, obviously there are many people who are still struggling for this. I mean, seeing what's happening in Florida, I think is exciting people, but maybe they're wondering if it can happen where they are. What would you say?
I would say absolutely can happen. I think when it comes to the South, there's a lot of misunderstanding about people's priorities. They think people are simply racist or they're not racist. It's not that simple. People are focused on their priorities. I know a lot of people who grew up in the South, and they said during the Great Depression, their fathers and their grandfathers were poor before the Depression, they're poor after the Depression, right? Working class people in the South understand that. They understand that politics historically has not been about them, whether you're white or black or otherwise. So they don't trust a lot of politics. And when someone like Donald Trump comes along and purports to be an anti-political person, that appeals to them to some extent. But when we see people like, Rep. Eskamani and others who speak directly to people's issues, directly to people's values, they hear that. That's why Barack Obama won this state twice. A black man won this state twice. He won this state because average people understood, white, black, and otherwise, they understood that this person was speaking to their values. This person understood their struggle. And people in the South are not stupid. They will vote for someone that honestly has their values. And, no disrespect to President-elect Biden, but a lot of people, I think, who voted in this election voted not for Trump, not for, the candidate on the Democratic ticket.
I think you're exactly right, Kofi. Now, I really appreciate the point you brought up about what the working class, what the politics of the working class looks like in the South. And of course, Florida was the first state in the South to pass a $15 minimum wage. Can you describe what the organizing looked like on the ground in the Fight for 15 movement? And can you connect this with what you spoke to about really connecting the issues and needs of Black, Latino, and white workers?
Yeah, so the organizing was really interesting. We were talking earlier today about the first event we had. We literally had 13 people out there. We organized a Burger King to come out and to stand up for a $15 minimum wage. This is way back in, I believe, 2013, right? So, like, we had full court media, we had helicopters circling us. They thought we were going to do something insane, and they were like, "What are you out here for?" And we're like, "A $15 minimum wage," right? Years later, we've done hundreds of media stories, and it's become something that's more mainstream. And that's what it's about. That's what core grassroots organizing is about. It's about uplifting the stories of affected people and making sure that they're heard. It's not about pundits. It's not about politicians. It's about uplifting affected people, making sure their voices are being heard. And that's what we've done over the past, what is it now? About 7, 8 years of the Fight for 15 in the state of Florida, is we've done that. We uplifted the voices of average working people. We've taken an issue that was fringe and we've made it mainstream. It did take the support of a multimillionaire in John Morgan to support a ballot initiative because the Florida legislature is broken. But at the end of the day, John Morgan would not have done this if it wasn't for fast food workers who literally have everything to lose. They don't have nothing to lose. They have everything to lose. They've stood up to their boss. They've stood up to McDonald's, multinational corporations, and they've spoken their truth to power. And they've uplifted this issue so much that $15 an hour now has become something that's mainstream. And that is really magical, I think, when it comes to the things that a lot of working class Americans would like to see it happen, but believe will never happen because they don't believe in politics anymore.
Yeah, extraordinarily well taken point. I can remember being told in 2014 that, I was over the moon, totally insane for saying there could be a $15 an hour minimum wage. That'll never happen. Amazing to see it go mainstream. Representative Eskamani, I hate to take a hard pivot on you here, but another important issue I think for a lot of progressive people that really hit the headlines yesterday nationally in terms of what's going on in Florida that I at least wanted to get a quick take from you on this draft bill by Governor DeSantis, allegedly to protect people against looters or whatever, but really it seems just authorizing vigilante violence against those who are standing up against racism at protests. Let me not editorialize too much, but just some of your thoughts perhaps on what we've seen in this draft bill and what you're expecting in terms of the pushback against it.
Absolutely. Well, I first just want to say thank you to Kofi. Kofi and I know each other for years, ever since I was a college Democrat. And it's always an honor to share space with you. He's such a legend in the Florida labor movement. To your question, though, it is horrifyingly bad. Governor Ron DeSantis is taking all the pages out of Trump's playbook and attacking our First Amendment rights and demonizing calls for racial equity. And instead of addressing the need to emphasize Black Lives Matter, to end mass incarceration, he has doubled down. He has doubled down on extremism, on dividing our state. He did a press conference a few weeks ago with law enforcement officers and Senate and House leadership, pitching this bill to the people of Florida. The backlash was huge. Floridians, including libertarians, those more conservative leanings, think this is so dramatically dangerous as it impedes on our constitutional rights. And then today, the policy itself proposed an expansion of stand your ground. And if anyone knows Florida, the story of Trayvon Martin. a young Black kid that was shot and killed in his neighborhood, and Stand Your Ground protected his killer. And now the governor wants to expand it to allow for there to be murder of someone even suspected of looting. And the reality too is that, you know, if there's a situation of property damage, we already have laws in the books to deal with it. It is grossly inappropriate for someone to be shot and killed for damaging a building. It is so inappropriate. And so this is going to be a fight this legislative session. And if you are a Floridian or you care about Florida, you know, get involved, keep up to date with the legislation, because we get back to Tallahassee formally in March, and this will absolutely be one of the biggest issues we have to fight against.
Well, you know, I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate both of you giving us these important perspectives. Big win there on the $15 an hour minimum wage in Florida. Hats off to you, and hats off to every worker, every non-worker, and everyone who pushed for that. That's State Rep Anna Eskamani joining us, as well as Kofi Hunt with the Fight for 15 Florida. Thank you so much again for being with us on Breakthrough.
Thank you.